So we did the simulations with Matt et al. 2006. And you can live beyond.
You have two jets. So how do you get it?
We did two-dimensional simulations. So in 3 dimensions, that's an if you can break those up, they're not jets, they're clumps, they're bullets. So all you have to do is get that when you're lifting off the holes of the envelope. If you can get that to break up, then you naturally form bullets. But that part's a conjecture.
And it gives everything besides the natural.
Well, I mean, it should be. Why wouldn't I mean, the magnetic field is not gonna. There's gonna be multiple. There's multiple moments you're gonna.
Anything in astrophysics, from planets to cluster of galaxies, when you see a jet, people tell you there is an accretion disk with jets. Nobody talks about any magnetic explosion.
That's because only in our field do we have these transient effects. In a young stellar object or an extragalactic disk, you have a long-lived disk with a long source of accretion. What we have that makes our stuff interesting is that it's episodic, and you actually do have something like this, which is the Gamma bursts, right? Gamma bursts are very short-lived. People talk about jets, but really in many ways, they're talking about the breakup of the firewall. Those are more.
Eta Carina was an explosive. I mean, paper from several months ago we compared this object 618 with the young stellar object. So I don't think it's.
So there are a pair of the pistols out in front of you. No. I'm sorry, I don't mean to facetious, but as the high priest has reminded me, this is a session on observation. So let's try to focus on the observations and their interpretation. Or something.
How massive are their fingers?
Of which?
So there's 2 things that we talked about. One is the molecular sort of a CRL618. So there's the molecular junk in the middle that we don't see in optical. And then there's the optical fingers, right? So what masses are we talking about in the fingers or the knots, whatever you want to call it?
So the optical fingers are all reflected starlight, and what we're seeing there is dominated by dust particles. We don't know what it is.
We're actually seeing it.
CO, yes.
We're seeing it, we can see their masses. They're small.
So the CO from the fingers, coincidental with the reflected. Okay, so small means what? Microphone.
10 to the minus
10 to the minus 3. And in the molecular?
Anyway, the very fast bipolar outflow is more massive than that. It's 18.
This is just a clamps.
Well, maybe these clamps are not a lot, but when you consider the very fast outflow, is I think close to 0.1 solar masses. Is that right?
It's a little bit less.
The very fast bipolar outflow, C18, is something like 0.1 solar mass. The very fast bipolar outflow, the whole thing, right? But if you care about the clamp or so, I agree with you, it's small. But the whole thing, the whole very fast bipolar outflow is that massive. It's not a lot, but it's not visible, right?
No, what you're saying is if you put all the high velocity outflow together, so that you look at a single spectrum of everything together,
yes.
and compute the mass of the high velocity,
Yes.
that adds up to 0.4.
We need a microphone.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so if you put all the high velocity outflow material together, then that might add up to a little less than 0.01 solar masses.
Okay, so I think this is plenty of data. We don't want more data. So now, isn't this? So there's a number. There are numbers. There's ranges of numbers in the central bipolar outflow, in the fingers, at least the molecular side of it. So shouldn't be this already enough to discriminate models as different as an accretion disk launching jets and a magnetic explosion? Vincent says no. So there's something to say.
No, I don't think so. One of the things that will discriminate very much, and that none of the observers have really pointed out so far, is the quite surprising fact that these knots have a very, very strongly back-curved bow. Right? This is exceedingly hard to do because you need a maximum contrast of the order of 100 or something thereabouts. Now, I'm coming back to what you said about discriminating being modeled. There, I think that there's not only the stuff that makes the boom, but also the stuff outside that is going to determine what the recurvature of that shock is. And I think that there would be a very, very good way of discriminating between the various possibilities. I mean, it's hard enough to make something that recurs as much with a uranium bullet, right? Let alone to do that with something that's gas, even if it's magnetized.
The other thing is that I was just wondering, is there a way with the jet to create fingers with different sizes but same kinematical age? I mean, for me, that is like the evidence that this had to be more like an explosive or something that happened instantaneously.
Well, that's in the original paper, right?
Yes.
The total surprise that this would be the case. Actually, if these are in fact bullets with recurrent shock, hydrodynamically what one should be looking for is the intersection of those shocks. Right? Yeah, just two power shocks. They must intersect somehow because the things are so close together. Are there any observers or anything on that?
Yes. Are you going to answer Vincent's question?
Yes,
Okay.
is that this Hubble law, which is characteristic of the explosion that you mentioned, in fact, is being observed in many objects, not only CRLTCP. It's quite a general property, and in all objects, all of these protoplanetaries where you can map the velocity and the position you find on Hubble law, is quite a general result. So it's not a peculiar property of CRLTCP. It's observed in many, many objects. And in all cases, really, I think we can say that all these clamps, all these flows, all these streams and bubbles, all this material was ejected practically at the same time.
There is even more evidence than that because there are some, in particular the S-shapes and stuff, where there is point symmetry even among the details, right? So that also, it would be a gross coincidence to have that without a similar, well, sort of a t=0 departure from some very small center.
So I'm going to jump into the snake pit here and see if I can survive. I'm trying to remember any bilobed object in which the molecules arise in the interior of the lobes other than OH231. In the case of CRL618, the CO comes from around the outer edges and may very well be ambient material that shot and pushed aside by the lateral expansion of the lobe. So what's inside those things and what is the mass?
So with the new SMA data where we have higher angular resolution, even for CRL618, we find material within the Minnesota resolution which probably belongs to inside the lobes.
In those images, I only saw little puddles of CO. Most of them were still around the outside.
That's the low velocity group. If you look at the highest velocity clumps, they're sitting right in the middle group. But of course, the size of those clumps is not the grid of the thing itself, and it doesn't look like. At the moment, we don't have enough resolution, but I'm not 100% sure it's coming from the outside. It could be coming from the inside.
Adam? And then Valentin.
I was just speaking to the question about the Hubble flows, and that one thing that magnetic fields do, toroidal fields, if you have gradients of toroidal fields, as in magnetic towers, the kinds of things that we've done laboratory experiments with, and certainly Garcia Segura and all also have played with. That also, that because you're getting acceleration all the way up, you tend to get Hubble flows quite naturally. So we saw that in our simulations. I know Garcia Segura has seen it in his as well. So it's one natural way. Yeah, that's on me too. It's one natural way to get the Hubble flows.
Oh, Valentin, I'm sorry.
Anyway, this is about the question of the empty lobes, right? How empty they are. In some people, you ask about that. And in some cases, like in OH231.8, you don't see really a hole. What you see is a stream. I mean, the massive hole is a kind of very long stream. And really, you don't detect. Maybe there is a hole in the middle, but really, you don't detect it clearly. But in others, like for instance, in M1-92, that you remember probably, and also M2-56 and many others, you see the massive envelope, which is clearly a kind of hourglass shape nebula, and in the center, in the middle, there is gas, but the density is much lower. Typically, there is a factor 1/100 in the density ratio between the wall, which is very dense, and the central part, which is more excited and much less dense than another.
So in those two objects,
in some cases, you see that in others, really, it's not obvious. For instance, in CRL-618, it's not obvious. There is really a large contrast between the very center of the lobes, I mean the very center, in the axial direction, and the very fast bipolar flow, which is dense.
I'm sorry, which emission lines do you see the axial emission in CRL-618?
In CRL-618?
So we have the figures of CRL-618, and I thought I heard you say that right up the spine of them is some molecule that fills the lobes.
In the case of CRL-618, in the very fast bipolar flow, there is no clear goal. If there is something like a flow, it's not that clear. It's more or less it's not empty. You see what I mean? Maybe there is some contrast, but it's not very strong. But in others, really, there is a strong contrast. The lobes, I mean, the walls of the lobes and the center of the lobes. And I think that is the question.
An M256 and an M192, when I look at the molecular images, I see gas around the edges of the lobes that may well have been pushed aside by the passage of the jet or some sort of a fluid, invisible, moving up the inside and creating the lobes. Pardon me?
In which sources?
M256 and M191 or 2.
Yes, in these cases you see gas in the middle of the lobe, but really density is very this gas which is emitted in optical lines, for instance.
Right, but there's not much mass in here. The mass is in the CO, which is around the outer edge.
The mass is in the walls. But in the center, you also detect this.
The question is whether the walls are material that was pushed, ambient material that was pushed aside by the fluid that created the lobes, in which case the mass is not the ejected mass, it's the ambient mass that once filled the volume, or whether the stuff along the edges of the lobes was swept out there from some sort of collimator. And there are different molecules, Lee and Sahai in 2003.
I would like to know that.
Right. Maybe we should move on to a different topic.
Bruce, I just shed a little bit more light on what you just said. Just look at the spectral types of the central stars. Just look at the spectral types of the central stars. OH231.8 still has an iris, so there's plenty of fuel left in the envelope. Whereas 618, whatever happened, common envelope, onset of common envelope, whatever happened, it has no fuel left, essentially. So I think that's one way to look at these systems is there fuel left in streaming down the whole of those.
618 has a hot star because it's making an H2 region.
Right, and that's my point. Yeah, they're very different.
Anything else? No.
Yes. The Hubble flow has no center and it's isotropic. The flows here are not isotropic and clearly there is a center. So please don't use the Hubble flow for this planetary nebula. It's wrong. It's a wrong term. This is wrong. Simple, but I repeat it every 8 years.
It's too late.
It's not too late, really. It's wrong. It's not that it's confusing. It's wrong. Okay, if you confuse, call it the med, because the med found it.
So I think at this point we should ask each of the speakers to come up to the front so the questions can be directed at them and their talks, if they wouldn't mind.
Can I make a comment? Sure. Because you want to raise the subject of nomenclature. So, people use the phrase or the word post-AGB very commonly, but a lot of them just mean not feedback in the way, but objects which are like what I call this prominent AGB star, which are circummagnitudes, etc. However, that is wrong. I mean, that is not completely correct because pre-planetary nebula have post-AGB stars in the center. So I would like us to decide that we're going to call PAGB everything which is the Riviera AGB and the PL phase, not just the stars which don't have PL.
naked post-AGB.
Yeah. Post-AGB is post-AGB, that's all. It's a post-AGB central star. That will be the central star of Branch Nebula, a pre-Branch Nebula, or that will be the central star of one of these astronomical objects.
So do you know how long it takes to have a definition change? Please, with the speakers, please come up so that it's easy to address questions right to you. Bruce, good.
Just following up on what Vondra said, some of these non-conical objects, when we run into some problems, is it's not clear that they are post-AGB, perhaps post-red giant, because of the small scale, the small period of the minor. Could it survive at the AGB? So it just muddies the waters a bit about his suggested definition.
That's just what we needed, muddier waters. Dr. Fire. Did everybody hear that? I see you have to go in this way and that way. Okay. So say it.
Well, the suggestion that the kind of objects that Hans von Winkel has looked at, which have a disk around the star, it's not clear that all of those are post-AGB because of the small scale. They might be post-red giants that lost their outer layers before they reached the AGB, because you have periods of those of a few years. You can't have a star around the tip of an AGB star with a period of a few years.
All right, questions directed to the speakers, please.
Quick one for Tim. So you didn't talk at all about kinematic studies with your explicit spectra this morning. Your resolution was 5,000. It's not super, but it's good.
Yes, it's not great. It translates to something like a velocity resolution of about 50-60 kilometers per second across the spectrum PSF. But of course, you can do better than that by fitting the lines. We just do a Gaussian fit, so it's one of the spectrum lines. I didn't talk about it, I didn't have time, but we do see velocity gradients across some of the objects. In particular, I showed 22023, which is the one with the curving arms coming out and some bounce shocks at the end and some knots. There's a clear velocity gradient across that, which looks like the left-hand side is blue shifted, I think, and the right-hand side is red shifted. We haven't seen anything that looks like rotation yet, though. But if we can look into it.
I have a question.
No.
This is again something I keep repeating. One of the indications for the energy is departure from accessibility. And there was only one talk referring to two ring, the center. But I saw it again and again and again. And I think we're still in observations, not theory. Just observer when present planetary nebulae, velocity, PV plot, or images, should pay more attention to departure from accessibility and measure. Tell us, look, the central star is whatever, 5% of the center, velocity is not symmetric. This can teach us quite a lot. People, well, here and there people mention, usually it is ignored. I don't know, CRL 618, discussed it here, several people, nobody mentioned that it actually has a very clear departure from accessibility, which of course there was expired. So, this is one example. So, but we see it in many other nebulae, I mean, PV plots, and the lines in different regions. They're not talking about the one that with the alternate, which, you know, too low for us. They talk about departure perpendicular to the self-symmetry axis. So, it's a general question. People want to refer to the data observation or departure from axis. Nobody?
So, I'm a little bit puzzled by your insistence that the worry about departures from axis symmetry, because I think that if you have centrally directed outflows, collimated outflows, there will be these points in it. What we can look for departures from are offsets of the central star from, if you have enough geometrical symmetry in the nebula around, you can look for offsets of the central star from the geometrical centers of symmetry of your lobes or your rays or whatever. But I wouldn't worry about axis symmetry at all. Why would you worry about axis? Why would you expect this to be axis symmetry anyways, unless your collimated outflow is bipolar and remains in one direction all the time?
Look at CRL 618.
Yes.
Clearly, it's not the central star. It's looked at three jets and bent them in one direction. You need to explain the direction.
Well, we talked about it already. There are bullets coming out in different directions. I mean, I'm not saying agreeing with that one, agreeing, but I'm saying why worry about axis symmetry now?
No, it's not. You can have several. You know, you can take your point symmetry and move it to the side. It's not just a general spherical movement.
So you're saying general offsets of the central star from?
No, not only of the central star. You can have bent jet in the same direction, different effects.
I agree.
So and you can quantify it. Tell us how much mass moves on one side